What's good with it? What's good with it? You're watching Live Talks with Low every Wednesday, same time and place, unless I say otherwise. If you're just tuning in, that's my most recent single that I just dropped called Redemption 2026. It's available on all streaming platforms. You can get on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, whatever streaming platform of your choice, or you can be going on YouTube, or wherever you're watching Live Talks with Low at. I see I got people joining the live. Drop a comment, let me know where you from, and where you watching Live Talks with Low at. And I'm getting the topic for tonight. And if you missed last week's live, you should check out last week's live because I went over what my thoughts are about J. Cole's new album, The Fall Off. Very dope album, and it's a classic in my opinion. And a lot of others that I've conversated with that are real hip hop heads and real hip hop listeners, they also admitted that it's also a classic as well. So make sure you check that out. Tonight's topic will be consistency versus classics. What really makes an artist great? And I got a question that I posted up here while I was playing the song. In the screaming area, in the screaming era, should artists drop every year to stay relevant, or wait until the music truly means something? That definitely relates to the topic tonight because I'm asking the topic is consistency versus classics. What really makes an artist great? Some may argue that consistency makes an artist great. The more songs you drop, the more greater the artist is. The more faster you can release songs, the better the artist is. And some might agree that an artist take the time. Like for example, I just had a topic last week on J. Cole. J. Cole's a prime example for artists that he doesn't drop every year. He might not have an album from him every year. So every 2 years we get a J. Cole album, a J. Cole project. Now he's on Futures. You'll hear him on Futures, and he'll do albums with the Dreamville artists. He'll do an album like that, do Dreamville, but Revenge of the Nerds. But he's a good prime example of artists like take his time to release quality music, and that's what's gonna be about the topic tonight. I'm going to share my thoughts on it, on what I think. Me personally, I think classic would really make artists great. You can release a whole bunch of songs, and you could drop a whole bunch of songs back to back. You can drop a song every month, and it's not good. It's not quality music. But, not everybody heard this old saying. Not to sound cliche though, but quality over quantity. You know, quality over quantity. You know, you might not have as much, but the quality is good. So that's what people like, the quality. I think quality takes over quantity. But I definitely want to get into that tonight. And feel free to drop your comments in the chat if you like what you're hearing tonight, and if you got anything to say, or if you like to join me on the live as well, I can bring you up as well. As a matter of fact, I dropped the live link in the comments. I'm gonna post it up here. Matter of fact, I'll leave it up here for you guys. And I'm gonna get started on the topic. So we talk about consistency. We talk about consistency like it's the ultimate badge of greatness in music. Drop every year, stay visible, never disappear. But at the same time, we still say we want classics. So here's the real question: are we overrating consistency, or are we just misunderstanding what greatness actually looks like? Now, to be fair, consistency matters. It does matter. In today's music climate, staying active keeps your name alive and it builds momentum and sharpens skills. It keeps fans engaged. But you have artists like Drake, Master This, these everywhere albums, features, playlists, and that visibility translates to dominance. Same with artists like Lil Wayne doing his mixtape run. Volume wasn't laziness, it was hunger. So consistency isn't the enemy. In fact, upcoming artists is often necessary. So if you're an upcoming artist, it's necessary to be consistent. But here's the argument for classics. But on the other side of things, too much output can dilute impact. So basically, when you're releasing too much music, you can dilute your impact because you're not taking your time. You're too busy trying to get music out. We've seen it where artists try to rush the album out because fans keep demanding and demanding and demanding. Oh, we can't wait no longer. We want the music out. You know, people keeps that demanding, but sometimes it doesn't work like that. Sometimes it's better to just take your time with everything. So when everything is available all the time, nothing feels special. So nothing gonna feel special. And you have artists like Kendrick Lamar that don't move that way. You have artists like J. Cole who don't move that way. And they like to take long gaps and drop potential releases with high cultural weight. So the same with J. Cole, selective, purposeful, grounded. Every time he dropped, it feels like an event. Now he dropped the fall off just what 2 weeks ago. You see how everybody talking about it? People still talking about it, and the album came out 2 weeks ago. And then he went on in his Honda Civic, got his old Honda Civic, and went on the truck tour. So let's see, he got the truck tour. And look how everybody was going crazy. He went all over Virginia, Georgia. He came to Atlanta, sells CDs at the trunk. Then he even went and got on Twitter X, excuse me, and said, "Hey, I'll come pick you up if you're in the area. Let me know. Send me a message, and I'll pick you up. You can listen to the Fall Off right around town. Listen to Fall Off with me in the Civic, which I think is dope. So that's another way to push his album out. So people gonna be talking about that for years to come, man. To be honest, like I said last week, he's setting the bar with that. So the Fall Off is a classic. That's a prime example. We're seeing it right now, and the concert tickets gonna sell out too. And I think the thing about it when artists don't focus so much on trying to get things out so quick, it builds that anticipation. That's part of the artistry. And then now that we kind of think about it now, when it comes to it, consistency versus classic, what are we really rewarding? And here's where it can get uncomfortable. Streaming culture rewards frequency. Correct. Algorithms don't care about classics; they care about activity, which is correct. So artists are pressured to drop even when they don't have much to say. So I think that's a big problem. Artists don't have really much to say. So sometimes they just drop anyway just for the sake of keeping their name out in front of people, just to say they can stay relevant. So I'm not putting much thought into this though, but just so I can get something out there, you know, I'm gonna say this. But here's here's what raises a real question though. Are we really celebrating greatness or just availability? And I'd like for you guys to sit back and think about that. Are we celebrating greatness or just availability? So let me ask you guys this. So what would you think if, clip that? What would you think? Whether you're on the live watching now or you're watching doing the replay, I want to ask you this question. Are we celebrating greatness or just availability? Which one matters to you when it comes to listen to your favorite artists? Do you care how much music they drop, how much available they are, or do you care how much greatness they have, at least in the past? Are you okay with that? Are you content with that? So I asked the question again. Are we celebrating greatness or just availability? Because productivity and legacy aren't the same thing. That often gets misconstrued. People think, oh, he's being productive. He's releasing a whole bunch of. Nah, that's necessarily don't mean legacy. You can have a whole bunch of music. I'm pretty sure we'll see the where artists got a whole list of albums, and you might have one or two of them that great. Then the other five or so is just like, okay, so. I know you have it. Somebody in the chat. You can name an artist that has that example of what I just said. Yeah, artists that's being productive, constantly releasing music. Every month they got something dropping, or every year they got an album dropping, but they're not really pulling quality music out. And some, not to say that all do it, some can release that fast and put quality music out, but you got some that release a little slower though. But like you had the J. Cole's, the Kendrick Lamar's, the Lupe's, the Nas's, the Jay Z's, the Rick Ross's, the T.I.'s, the Ludacris. They take the time and drop their music, and you get a classic album. So when they drop, you might say, "Hey, it took it 2 years to drop," but once you listen to the album and you get the product out, the final product out, nobody's really caring that it took them 2 years to release it or took them however long to release it. We're just happy it's here. And now we're just talking about it's like the best thing out, like the fall off. J. Cole, last time he released, I might delete this later, was in 2024. And he goes with the fall off in 2026. 2 years later, he releases a classic. Nobody's complaining that it takes him that long to drop. We've been stopped doing that with J. Cole a long time ago. And if you're a real fan, J. Cole fan, you'll know that he all takes 2 years to release every album, and we know that. And as he missed, I say no. Now, of course, you're gonna have it where of course, it gets to a whole thing that where this album better than this album, or this album is better than this album. You get the ranking albums, but that's normal. That's cool. But to say because productivity and legacy, it's not the same thing. It's really not. And I think they get mixed up. So more so, I think the more an artist takes its time to release music and put more quality music out, I think that builds a better legacy than just trying to be productive. Just say, hey, here, I got something out. Let me feed them something. They're hungry. So I got to feed them something. Nah. And because where the real balance comes in. The truth is, this isn't either or. Consistency without attention becomes noise. Patience without purpose becomes absence. And that's true. And what I just said there, patience without purpose can become absence. You can have where, you know, I was being patient, just trying to be a perfectionist. I've been guilty of this myself. Some might not know, or some may know that I am an artist myself, and I've been guilty of being a perfectionist, or just trying to sit on things, or say, hey, it's not ready yet, or it doesn't sound good, or sometimes you got to put it out, or it's got to have a purpose behind it. You know, and like I said again, Kendrick, J. Cole, and Lupe. Those guys put purpose, their attention on what they release. So you're not gonna get a release from them every year. And if you do, then it's probably an album they already did a couple of years ago and they just decided to put it out. We didn't know nothing about it, but they did. And that's why they get brought up a lot. And that's the first thing I thought of when I came up with this topic tonight. I was like, this big carpet towards Kendrick and J. Cole. They do that. They're patient with their drops and they have a purpose. But you have some artists that think they have that patience without purpose. Then let's build more anticipation, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. And you can be consistent, but if you don't have the attention behind it, then it's just gonna put noise. So again, it has to be intentional. So whether you're gonna be consistent or you're gonna wait, take your time to drop, or you're gonna take your time to create a classic, it has to have attention. So the tension has to be good behind it, or it's not gonna hit. Now, great ones understand timing. The great ones always understand timing. Early on, consistency builds foundation. Now, at the beginning, you know, they started off releasing it consistently because they had to get the name out. They had to build a fan base, and nobody knew who they was, or well, they knew who they were, but they didn't have the cut like following that they have now, or the following that they have now. But so they had to build a fan base. So at first they had to get consistent. They had to consistently release records to get people to understand that what their style at and what to expect from them. But once they say, "Hey, I got the masses, I got attention to the masses, I got the people," then hey, they go ahead and take their time with it. Put a little more quality in it, and take the time to cook. Put the album on slow cook. Now later, intentional drops build legacy. So later on in the career of the artist, once they get established, now they get intentional about their drops, and it starts to build towards their legacy. It's not about how often you release; it's about why you release. I think that's something that I think often gets misconstrued in the hip hop community. And, whether you're an artist or somebody that's an engineer or just somebody that just listens to music or listen to hip hop, also get misconstrued that hey, it's not about how often you release. It's about why you release it. The intentionality, like I was saying earlier, the intentionality behind release by releasing music clip that it to be intentional. I think the greatest artists that had the best albums or had to make the most classics is they're intentional. That's why we had the classic albums like Dog Pound, All Eyes on Me, Get Rich or Die Trying, Trap Music, Word of Mouth. We got Port of Miami. We got the Black Album, the Blueprint. Those artists, Jay-Z was intentional about doing those. Rick Ross was intentional, T.I. was intentional about 50 Cent was intentional. Eminem, Eminem Show. Marshall Mathers LP. All those guys was intentional about their releases. So it wasn't about how often they dropped. It's about why they was releasing and what was the intention behind it. And if you're just following along, just joining us, the topic I'm talking about tonight is consistency versus classics. What really makes an artist great? And to me, what makes an artist great is I think classics. Because you can be consistent and you have no attention behind it, and it's just going to be noise. I think when it comes down to it, I think the more the artist focuses on creating classics than being consistent and constantly dropping music just to get something out there, just to satisfy people, just to people please, the better the artist is when he takes his time to create those classics. He sits with the music, he builds a quality album, has a theme behind it, has a message behind it. And I'm gonna go back to J. Cole again. Not to sound like a broken record, but the fall off is a prime example. What J. Cole did, right now, is highlighted right now because he just dropped something that's classic. We're gonna be talking about this for years. And in my opinion, I think that's the best work. That's a great example of what I'm talking about tonight. And if you missed last week's live, Go back and watch it. I went into detail about the fall off and why I thought it was a great album. Make sure you check that out as well. And, check the playlist out, Live Talks with Low playlist. I should have a playlist with Live Talks with Low. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, subscribe, and check that out as well. But to get back to the topic, but I think classics what makes an artist great more than consistency. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying consistency is not good. Consistency is great. Even if it has attention behind it, it's great. But it comes a time where you consistently put stuff out, but it might not hit like the last one. You might put something else out. You might get worse as you release more music, so you might need to take time to back it up. To reset. To relax. Let things happen, live life a little bit, then come back and release something. Then you might have something to talk about. I know you've seen it where artists might be going through something, or they got a court case, then you drop a fire album. Or artists went through a difficult time, lost a death of a family member, or going through a difficult time in life, so they write their best work. And vulnerability, I know that's not necessarily the topic tonight, but vulnerability is also something that makes an artist great too as well. And I think you hear that a lot in the classics. A lot of classics don't take, name a classic album, If you watch live, name a classic album in the chat. Or if you're catching the replay, you can drop it in the comment section. We can talk about it. Think about your classic albums. Not to say the artist didn't consistently record it night and day, but it took their time releasing that classic album. I remember when albums didn't come out so fast, back to back. Now you have artists releasing multiple albums in the same year. You might get 3 or 4 albums from one artist in the same year. According to some artists, depending on the artist, you might get that. But the great artists, the great ones, you might get one every year, or you might get one every 2 years. We haven't got one for Kendrick yet, but it's about time for Kendrick to release another album. It's time for him to drop another album. I don't think he dropped another album in like 2 years, probably 3 years, might be longer than that. I can't remember the last Kendrick album is, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. Drop in the comment section. It was the last Kendrick album that we had. I can't remember. I think Mr. Morale. I think that's the last one. I think that was about 3 or 4 years ago. And some people might consider that a classic. Damn, that's a classic album. So in my opinion, I think classics what makes the artist great. Consistency is part of it, but the classics what make an artist great. I think when artists take the time instead of trying to rush music out or just trying to rush out what they gotta say or rush to get a product out just so they can get people to buzz about them again, they build something that's great and everlasting. And look what the fall off did. Look what it did. Look what Damn did. Look what Pimp the Butterfly did. Look what the Black Album did. Look what the Carters did. The first 3 Carters. Classic albums. Look what they did. They buzzed about it. Everybody buzzed about it. Everybody talked about it for months and months and months. People still talking about it. Years and years later, we still gonna talk about it. So that's what makes an artist great. The amount of classes that an artist can push. No matter how long it took them to put the classes out. It could be 3 years to get another release. I guarantee it. Kendrick dropped something today. I guarantee everybody gonna be on it without promotion. He has that much power now. He has that much appeal. He has the people looking for him. So if J. Cole might decide that the Fall Off is not his final studio album, 2 years later he kind of covers something else, we're gonna be buzzing about it again. He planned it perfectly. And actually, that he was talking about that 2 years ago because I remember him mentioning that 2 years ago. People was talking about it, and look when he released it, timing. And that's my point. I think timing. What the greatest artists are great at timing things, knowing when to release things, and knowing when to wait, and knowing when not to wait, and knowing when the right moment is to release. So they plan for it. They have their attention behind it, and he knew. They know how people are gonna react. They know people are gonna react to it. So they sit there and plan, they sit there and think it through, and we have another classic. So classes are what really makes an artist great. Consistency is good, even if it's intentional. But consistency only gets you so far because eventually you're putting everything out, you're showing like your hand too soon, In the beginning, yeah. But after a while, once you get the people's attention, you can chill a little bit. Let them miss you for a little bit. I'll give you a good example, good off topic. Not just make it about me, but my podcast. Sometimes I'll take breaks. I might take a 2 week break and I don't come on for a live for a little bit, just so people can miss me a little bit, and I come with something, you know, because I'm planning on the next topic. I might sit on it. I might not say nothing to the weekest time to come. Build anticipation. So when an artist chooses to wait and take the time to present a classic to his fans, he's building anticipation. So the more you make them wait and they know you're good, the more valuable it becomes. The more valuable it becomes. So there's value in waiting, making the people wait. And don't get me wrong, I know it's tough. I know it's hard in the screaming area. In the screaming era, we're in the screaming era where everything is quick. In the digital age, everything's quick. Everything's quick. Everything's so quick. Everybody, we're in the microwave generation, what I like to call it. We're microwave times. Everybody want everything fast. 30 seconds later, we got songs. Now SoundCloud. Most people can record a song in their bedroom. They can have it uploaded by midnight. Have it uploaded in the next 2 hours, and then they drop that song. Then noon tomorrow they got another one. Then Saturday they got two more. We live in the digital age, so it's a microwave. We're getting a lot of fast music, and I think that's the thing that's missing. So, I think let's get off the misconstrued. We get too mixed up with saying, hey, but this artist released so many songs and he had so many hits in a certain amount of time. Don't get me wrong. Not to take nothing from Drake. It's done Drake well. Drake has done that well. Some people benefit. Some artists benefit off being consistent. Being consistent, consistently dropping albums every year. Some artists benefit from it, but look at Drake now. Not to say that he's not still relevant, but has he really been popular like he used to? I don't think so. And I ask people this too, and it's just not me talking. This we have a conversation with people off the live, out in public, or people I know personally, asking them, "Do you think Drake the same? Think Drake has the same appeal he has? He doesn't. A lot of people can say that, attribute that to Kendrick Lamar. Yeah, flip that. They might can say that, but no, at the time. But I'm talking about the time when Drake was hot. He was consistently dropping hits. Consistently on everybody's record. Consistently dropping album after album every year, and it was going number one, having number one hits. I think he got the most number one hits, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. Somebody in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong. If you're watching the replay, you can hop in the comments and correct me if I'm wrong, or we can have a friendly debate. We can talk about it. But sometimes the consistency does work. And I don't want people to get a bit of school that's saying that it's just one way to work. It's not to say one side is wrong or to look at one side is wrong. It's just, in my opinion, I think classics what makes the artist really great. There's only a few artists that really have benefit off their consistent method that consistently drop albums and still make classics. Drake has that privilege of doing so. Whether people like him or not, or whether you're still a fan of him or not, or people still listen to his music or not, I give it to him that it worked for him. When it did, it worked for him. But now, I think people are gravitating towards some more artists looking for classics, and I think that's what people wanted. So I think now's the time to maybe, not to say don't just start making music completely and don't drop. You know, you still could drop a song every other month or drop a song every month, to consistently get your name out there, though. But I think it's more so dealing with projects. When it comes to projects, I think now that we're living in the microwave generation, everything is so like that. That's why we're probably having a lot of songs out and we have what you call fast music. And when it comes to projects, people feel like they don't have the time to fully digest a project or sit back and decide for a project, you know, not to sit with it, listen to your real fans. So I think classics could be more so for fans and consistency comes more when it comes to you just want to get something out, you want to gain new fans, or you just want to get something out real quick. Have people to buzz to talk, you want to make a quick buck. I think where that comes in at. But I'm gonna leave with this, and I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I say class is what makes the artist great. You're here for the brothers only. I say classes are what make the artist great. And in my opinion, I want to see the artist make a classic. Take the time to develop a classic. I want to hear a classic album. So when an artist talks about something, brings out a project, not just a single or just a few songs that they're putting out or just an EP, you can be consistent with that. You can constantly drop that. They can come out consistently. But when it comes to the albums, I want to hear a classic. And to me, that's what makes an artist great. I thank you guys for tuning in, tapping in. And if you missed it live, you can watch the replay right after this. And you can share your thoughts in the comments, provide some feedback. I love to debate with you. And you can share your thoughts. Now, before I get out of here, I always say this. Here's my contact email to be a guest on Live Talks with Low. That's at lorettasonly1@gmail.com. Leave that up here for a little bit. If you'd like to be a guest on Live Talks with Low, send me an email. Email a bio, picture of you, and tell me what you do. If you're an artist, tell me a song that you'd like for me to listen to. Send me your best song you'd like me to listen to. And if I like what I hear, I bring you up. And also, if you're a business owner, entrepreneurs, or just somebody who wants to have a topic, or you think a topic that's great and that's interesting, you think people need to hear about, you can also send me an email and tell me a little bit about what you do and tell me what the topic you want to talk about, or you have a question or anything. Hit me up. With that being said, I'm going to get out of here. And one more thing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This has been another episode of Live Talks with Low. Next week, I won't be going live. Next week, I won't be going live. The week after, I'll be going live. May have a special guest or I may not. But we'll see. I'll keep you guys informed. Thank you so much. Y'all be blessed. Peace.